December 18, 1878, 11 degrees below zero. Iris Hartwell hung from a frozen oak tree, her wrists bound with rope 6 inches above the ground. She had stopped shivering. Death was close. 3 armed men circled her like wolves. "You'll be dead by 7, one said, checking his watch. "Last chance. Talk." 240 yards away, hidden in the pines, a lone gunman watched through his rifle scope. For 5 years he'd sworn never to help another soul. But this girl was different. September 14, 1920, Fletcher Ranch, Colorado, 2:30 in the afternoon. Owen Fletcher sat on the porch of his ranch house watching the mountains turn gold in the fading light. 75 years old now, his hair silver white, but his back still straight. The scar that ran down his right cheek had faded over the decades, but it remained a permanent reminder of choices made and prices paid. His grandson James, 17 and restless with the energy of youth, sat on the steps below him, a notepad balanced on his knee. The boy had that look in his eyes, the one Owen recognized. The look that said he was searching for something, some answer to questions he didn't quite know how to ask yet. "Granddad," James said, finally breaking the comfortable silence between them. "You never told me how you met Grandma Iris." Owen was quiet for a long moment, his weathered hands resting on the arms of his chair. The old Winchester 1873 leaned against the wall beside him, the same rifle that had been with him for nearly 50 years. Its wood was worn smooth from decades of handling the metal, showing the patina of age and use. "Because it's not a story about meeting boy," Owen said, his voice still strong despite his years. "It's a story about failing, and about one last chance to do right." James turned to look up at him, curiosity lighting his young face. "Was it during your martial days?" Owen shook his head slowly. He reached into the pocket of his vest and withdrew a small silver locket tarnished with age. He held it in his palm, feeling its familiar weight. "After," he said. 5 years after I'd quit the law. 5 years after I'd sworn never to care about another living soul." He opened the locket. Inside was a faded photograph of a woman with gentle eyes and a small girl with red hair and a bright smile. His first family, the ones he'd lost. December 18, 1878. Owen continued, his voice growing distant as memory pulled him back across the decades. "That's when it started, the day I found her tied to a tree, freezing to death." He closed his eyes, and the years fell away. Winter 1878. The Colorado Rockies. December 18, 1878, 6:47 in the morning, 11 degrees below zero. The cold was absolute, the kind of cold that turned breath to ice crystals before it left your mouth, that made exposed skin burn like fire. The sun had not yet risen over the eastern peaks, leaving the world in that gray pre-dawn dimness that made everything look flat and unreal. Iris Hartwell hung from the lowest branch of an old oak tree, her wrists bound with rough hemp rope that cut into her skin. Her feet dangled 6 inches above the frozen ground, too short to reach too far to find any relief. They had stripped her coat before they tied her, leaving her in only a thin white shirt that was already stiff with frost and dark with blood from the cut on her shoulder. She had stopped shivering 20 minutes ago. That was a bad sign. She knew that much. When the shivering stopped, death was close. 3 men stood in a loose circle around her, their breath fogging in the bitter air. They wore heavy coats, lined with fur hats, pulled low scarves wrapped around their faces against the cold. They looked warm, they looked patient, they looked like men who had done this before. The tall one checked his pocket watch, the metal glinting in the gray light. He was 6'1", lean and hard, with the careful movements of a professional. A Sharp's rifle in .50 caliber rested across his back, and his eyes, when they looked at Iris, held neither cruelty nor mercy, just cold assessment. "Last time, Miss Hartwell," he said, his voice carrying easily in the still air. "Where did the mountain man take the documents?" Iris's lips were blue, her face white as the snow around them. She tried to speak, but her jaw was locked with cold. When words finally came, they were barely a whisper. "I don't know any mountain man." The tall man, Wade Carson, sighed and checked his watch again. 6:47. The temperature was still dropping. It would hit bottom just before sunrise, probably around 15 below. At that temperature in wet clothes with no coat, she would be dead within the hour, probably within 30 minutes. "It's 6:47, Wade said, almost conversationally. "Temperature's dropping. You'll be dead by 7. Talk." The man to Wade's left shifted nervously. He was fat, his face red even in the cold sweat visible on his forehead despite the temperature. He kept glancing at Iris, then looking away, then looking back. His hands trembled inside his gloves. The third man was young, maybe 20, with fear clear in his eyes. This was his first time doing something like this, and it showed. He stood too far back, his rifle held wrong, his weight on the wrong foot. Iris closed her eyes and tried to think of something else, anything else. She thought of her grandmother May, who had taught her that pain was just information, that it couldn't control you unless you let it. She thought of the warmth of the kitchen in May's small house, the smell of bread baking, the feeling of being safe and loved. But May was dead. 3 days dead, and Iris was alone. Wade checked his watch again. 6:52. 5 minutes had passed. The girl hadn't broken. He respected that in a professional sort of way. Most people broke when faced with certain death. Most people talked. This one had spine. 5 minutes, Wade said. Then we leave you. 240 yards away, hidden in the pine trees on the ridge above Owen Fletcher, lay prone in the snow, his Winchester 1873 pressed against his shoulder. He had been tracking these 3 men for 4 miles since 5:30 that morning, when he'd picked up their trail in the darkness. Through the rifle's sight he could see the girl hanging from the tree, could see the 3 men around her, could see the way her head hung forward, the way she had stopped moving. He had seen men freeze to death before. He knew the signs. He had sworn off people, sworn off trouble, sworn off caring about anything except survival and solitude. For 5 years he had lived alone on this mountain, trapping, hunting, avoiding humanity. But 3 weeks ago May had come to him, old May Cherokee grandmother to half the valley healer and keeper of secrets. She had climbed the mountain to his cabin, something she hadn't done in years, and she had been dying. He could see it in her eyes, in the way she moved, in the yellow tinge of her skin. She had given him a letter and asked him for a favor. Just one favor, she'd said, for old time's sake. For the time she'd hidden him from the law when he was being hunted, for the time she'd saved his life with her herbs and her knowledge and her silence. "They're coming for the girl," May had told him, her voice weak but urgent. "My granddaughter. The papers prove everything, and they'll kill her for them. Please, Owen, I know you don't owe me, but she's innocent." He had tried to say no, had tried to explain that he didn't help people anymore, that he couldn't, that every time he tried to help someone, they ended up dead. But May had looked at him with those ancient eyes and said, "You're the only marshal I ever trusted. Now I'm asking the man, not the badge." And so here he was, 240 yards from 3 armed men with a civilian hostage in the line of fire, breaking his 5-year vow of solitude and silence. He checked the wind. 12 to 15 miles per hour, left to right. The cold made the air dense, which was good for accuracy. The distance was long but manageable. He had made harder shots. But there were 3 targets and 1 hostage. If he shot Wade first, the other 2 might panic and shoot the girl. If he shot one of the others first, Wade would take cover, and this would become a siege. He needed an advantage. He needed them to move, to separate, to give him angles. He waited. Patience was a hunter's greatest weapon, and Owen Fletcher had learned patience the hard way. 6:54. Wade signaled to his men. Time was up. The girl hadn't talked, which meant she either truly didn't know anything or she was tougher than he'd given her credit for. Either way, they were done here. Thomas Hartwell had paid them to make this look like an accident, a foolish girl who wandered into the woods and froze to death. "Mount up," Wade said quietly. The fat man looked relieved. The young one looked sick. Wade looked at Iris one more time. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow. Maybe another 10 minutes, he thought. Maybe less. "Last words?" he asked. Iris's eyes opened. They were green, he noticed. bright green like new leaves. Even now dying, there was defiance in them. "Burn in hell," she whispered. Wade almost smiled. The girl had spine right to the end. He respected that. "You got spine," he said. "Waste." The single rifle shot cracked across the frozen air like a breaking bone. Wade's hat flew off his head, the bullet passing so close he felt the wind of it against his scalp. All three men dove for cover weapons, coming up, eyes scanning the tree line. "U.S. Marshal." The voice came from the ridge, deep and carrying. "Drop your weapons." Wade pressed himself against the trunk of a pine tree, his mind racing. There were no marshals assigned to this territory. The nearest marshal office was in Fort Collins, 6 days' ride away, and marshals didn't operate alone. "Bullshit!" Wade shouted back. "Marshals don't operate alone." The second shot came immediately, bark exploding 2 inches from Wade's head splinters, cutting his cheek. The shooter was good. Very good. 200 yards at least, maybe more in this cold, and both shots had been precisely where the shooter wanted them. "Want to test that theory?" the voice called. The fat man panicked and fired blindly toward the ridge, his rifle bucking in his hands. The young one followed suit, both of them wasting ammunition on targets they couldn't see. Owen picked off the rifle from the fat man's hands with a single shot, the bullet striking the barrel and sending the weapon spinning away. The fat man yelped and clutched his stinging hands. The young one stopped firing immediately, his face going white. Wade was thinking, calculating. One rifle, excellent shot, 200+ yards minimum, professional, calm, has to reload after each shot. Single-shot rifle probably, Winchester maybe, or a Sharps. But one man, no matter how good, had limits. "We're leaving," Wade called to his men. "This isn't worth it." The fat man, nursing his hand, stammered, "But the girl, she'll freeze anyway." Wade cut him off. "Move." They mounted their horses and rode hard to the south, putting distance between themselves and the shooter. Wade didn't look back. A professional knew when a job had gone wrong, knew when to cut losses and retreat. Owen was already running. 240 yards in 90 seconds. His lungs burned in the cold air, his boots finding purchase on the frozen ground through pure instinct. He wasn't 20 anymore, wasn't even 30, but he could still move when he needed to. He reached the tree and cut the rope with his knife in one smooth motion. Iris collapsed, and he caught her feeling how light she was, how cold. She couldn't weigh more than 135 pounds, and most of that was muscle from hard work, not softness from easy living. He stripped off his coat, thick wool lined with bear fur, and wrapped it around her. She was barely conscious, her eyes unfocused, her skin the color of old snow. "Who?" she managed to whisper. "Quiet." Owen said, his voice rough from disuse. "Save your strength." He lifted her easily, settling her weight against his chest, and started walking. His cabin was 2.3 miles away uphill through pine forest and over 2 ridges. In this cold, carrying a person, it would take him 45 minutes minimum. He had 45 minutes to keep her alive. Owen's cabin sat at 8,400 feet elevation, tucked into a natural hollow that protected it from the worst of the mountain winds. It was small, 18 feet by 20, built of pine logs, chinked with mud and moss. Smoke rose from the stone chimney, a thin gray line against the white sky. He had left the fire burning when he'd gone tracking before dawn, a habit from his marshal years. Always have a warm place to return to. You never knew what condition you'd be in when you got back. The inside of the cabin was Spartan but functional. One bed frame made of rough-hewn pine, a straw mattress covered with wool blankets, a table and 2 chairs, shelves holding ammunition, dried venison, medical supplies, books. A rack on the wall holding his Winchester and his Colt Peacemaker .45, one window covered with oiled paper to let in light without letting in wind. The fire had burned down to coals, but the room was still 54 degrees warm compared to the outside. Owen laid Iris on the bed near the fire and immediately began assessing her condition. He had learned field medicine during his marshal years, had treated everything from bullet wounds to snake bites to hypothermia. He knew what to look for. Her fingers were white and hard, no feeling when he pressed them. Stage 2 frostbite. Her toes were red and painful, but not frozen. Stage 1 recoverable. Her ears showed minor frostbite, the tips white, but they would heal. The rope wounds on her wrists were deep second-degree abrasions that had bled and then frozen. He would need to clean those carefully to prevent infection. The cut on her shoulder was 3 inches long, not deep, but it would need stitches. He worked methodically the way he had been trained. Build up the fire first, get the room temperature up to 70 degrees minimum. Prepare lukewarm water, not hot. Hot water on frozen tissue would cause more damage than the freezing itself. While the water heated, he gathered his medical supplies. Whiskey for cleaning wounds, clean linen for bandages. Honey, which the Cherokee had taught him, was nature's best antibiotic. A surgical needle and horsehair thread for stitches. Iris drifted in and out of consciousness as he worked. He removed her frozen shirt carefully, averting his eyes from her body, preserving what modesty he could while still doing what needed to be done. He wrapped her in wool blankets and began the slow process of warming her fingers in lukewarm water. She gasped when feeling started to return, the pain sharp and intense. Frostbite hurt worse when it thawed than when it froze. "I know," Owen said quietly. "Hold on." He cleaned the rope wounds with whiskey, the alcohol burning in the raw flesh. She gritted her teeth but didn't cry out. He noticed that. Most people screamed. The shoulder wound needed stitches. He threaded the needle with horsehair, the traditional way, stronger than regular thread and less likely to cause infection. "This will hurt," he warned. "Everything hurts." Iris managed to say, her voice stronger now that warmth was returning to her body. He was gentle, his hands steady, placing each stitch with the precision of long practice. 4 stitches neat and even, pulling the wound closed without puckering the skin. "You're gentle," Iris said, watching him work. "For a mountain man." "Hold still." "They called you Marshall." "Was. Not anymore." "Why help me?" Owen paused, needle halfway through the 4th stitch. May asked. Iris's eyes filled with tears, the first emotion she had shown. "She's dead. 3 days ago. I'm sorry." The tears spilled over, running down her cheeks. But she didn't sob, didn't break down, just let the tears fall in silence while Owen finished the stitching. When he was done, he bandaged her wrists and shoulder with clean linen and honey, then wrapped her back up in the blankets. He handed her a cup of willow bark tea, hot and bitter, a natural pain reliever. "Drink. It'll help." She sipped, made a face at the taste, but kept drinking. "Grieve later," Owen said, his voice not unkind. "Live first." She looked at him, then really looked at him. Seeing past the rough exterior, the mountain man clothes the weathered face to something underneath, something that understood grief. "Your bedside manner needs work," she said, and there was the ghost of humor in her voice. Owen almost smiled. "You're still alive to complain. I'll take that as success." Evening settled over the mountains, the temperature dropping to 8 degrees outside, but inside the cabin the fire kept the cold at bay. Owen cooked venison stew in an iron pot hanging over the flames, the smell filling the small space. Iris sat up now, wrapped in blankets, watching him move. He was tall, she noticed, 6'2" at least, broad-shouldered from years of physical labor. His hair was dark brown with threads of silver starting at the temples, even though he looked no older than 33 or 34. His hands were scarred and calloused, but they moved with economy and purpose. No wasted motion, everything deliberate. The scar on his right cheek was old, long-healed. A knife wound, she thought, or maybe a bullet graze. His eyes were what struck her most, brown, almost amber in the firelight, and deeply sad. These were eyes that had seen loss, that had looked at death and recognized it. "You knew my grandmother," Iris said. Owen nodded, stirring the stew. "She patched me up once, 1873, gunshot wound in the side." "You were hunting someone." "Being hunted. She hid me for 3 weeks, taught me about herbs plants, never asked questions." He ladled stew into 2 tin bowls and handed her one. Simple food, but hot and nourishing. Venison potatoes, wild onions, salt but no spices. They ate in silence for a while. Then Owen spoke again. When May sent word last month she was dying, I visited. She talked about you." Iris looked up, surprised. "I'm surprised she mentioned me. My family pretends I don't exist. She said you were the only one with spine in that whole house." Iris gave a bitter laugh. "Spine gets you tied to trees, apparently." Owen set down his bowl and looked at her directly. "Why were those men after you?" Iris took a breath and began to explain. About May's death 3 days ago. About the Bible May had left her with papers hidden inside. Names, numbers, land plots. Information Iris didn't understand but recognized as important. "I thought I should show Father," Iris said. "Ask what they meant. He's a land developer. I thought he could help." "Your father is Thomas Hartwell," Owen said, and it wasn't a question. "You know him. Reputation. Land developer. Friends with Judge Blackstone." Iris nodded. "Then you understand. I thought Father could help. But when I showed him the papers—" She closed her eyes, remembering. December 16th, 1878. The Hartwell Mansion in Denver. 8 o'clock in the evening. The house was everything Owen's cabin was not. Large, ostentatious, filled with expensive furniture and thick carpets and crystal chandeliers. A house designed to impress, to intimidate, to announce wealth and status. Iris had entered her father's study carrying May's Bible, nervous but hopeful. Surely her father would know what to do with the information. Surely he would help. Thomas Hartwell sat behind his massive oak desk, a glass of brandy in his hand. Judge Henry Blackstone sat across from him, 64 years old, drunk as always, a cigar smoldering in the ashtray beside him. "Father," Iris had said, "I need to ask about these papers. Gran left them for me, and I don't understand what they mean." Thomas looked up and saw the papers in her hand. His face went white, actually white, all the blood draining away. He stood so fast his chair fell over backward. "Where did you get those?" "Gran left them. In her Bible. She said—" Thomas crossed the room in 3 strides and snatched the papers from her hand. His fingers were shaking as he looked through them page after page, his face going from white to red. "Father, what's wrong?" He slapped her, hard, across the face with his full strength. Iris fell, hitting the floor, her cheek burning, her ears ringing. Judge Blackstone stood up, alarmed. "Thomas, the girl—" "She's seen the names," Thomas said, his voice shaking. "All of them." Blackstone's face went pale to match Thomas's. "Then she can't leave this house." Thomas grabbed Iris by the arm and hauled her to her feet. His grip was bruising, painful. "Who did you show these to? Who did you tell?" "No one. I came straight to you." "Liar." He shook her. "Who else has copies?" "There are no copies. These are the only ones." But Thomas didn't believe her. Or maybe he did and just didn't care. He called for servants, gave orders in a cold, clipped voice. "Lock her in the cellar. No food, no water. I'll deal with her later." They had dragged her down to the cellar, a cold stone room beneath the house where wine and preserves were stored. They locked the door and left her in darkness. She stayed there for 2 days. No food, no water. Just cold and darkness and fear. On the 3rd day, Wade Carson came. Back in the cabin, Iris opened her eyes. Owen was watching her, waiting. "I was in the cellar for 2 days," she said. "Then Wade Carson came. Father had hired him. They questioned me about copies, about who I'd told. I swore I'd told no one." "How did you escape?" Owen asked. "I didn't. Father had them take me out to the woods, make it look like I wandered off and froze, an accident." Her voice was flat, emotionless. "He was going to let me die and call it natural causes." Owen's jaw tightened. "Cold-blooded. He's done worse. May tried to tell people about his land deals. A week later she got sick. The doctor said natural causes." "You think your father poisoned her?" "I know he did. May was healthy until she threatened to go to the federal marshals." Owen was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "It's my turn now." Iris looked at him. "Your turn. You told me your story. Fair is fair." He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the darkness. When he spoke, his voice was distant. "I was good at the job. Too good. Cared more about catching outlaws than coming home." "You had a family. Wife, daughter." He didn't turn around. 1873. My wife was 8 months pregnant with our second. I left to track the Hollis gang. Told her I'd be back in 10 days. You weren't. 13 days. Storm delayed us. When I got back, she'd gone into labor early. Complications. The doctor said if I'd been there, maybe they could have saved one of them. He stopped, his hand pressed against the window frame. Emma, my daughter. She was 4 years old. When she realized something was wrong with her mother, she got scared and ran outside. Fell through the ice on the creek. Drowned. The silence in the cabin was absolute except for the crackling of the fire. "I lost them both," Owen said, "because I wasn't there. Because I chose the badge over them." Iris felt tears on her cheeks. "That's not your fault." Owen turned to look at her. "Isn't it? I could have sent deputies." "I didn't. I wanted the glory of the capture. I wanted to be the one who brought in the Hollis gang, and while I was gone, my family died. You couldn't have known. I should have been there. That's all that matters." He walked back to the fire, his shoulders heavy with old grief. "I quit the marshals the day I buried them. Moved up here. Figured if I couldn't protect my own, I had no right protecting strangers." Iris wanted to say something to offer comfort, but the words felt inadequate. Instead she said, "But you protected me." May asked. "And she was dying. I owed her." "Is that the only reason?" Owen looked at her, and for a moment something flickered in his eyes, something besides grief, but then it was gone, shuddered away. "Get some sleep," he said. "Long day tomorrow." But Iris had seen it, that moment of connection, and she understood that Owen Fletcher was a man who had locked his heart away and lost the key. Whether she could help him find it again, she didn't know, but she was alive to try. That was enough for now. 3:42 in the morning. Owen sat up instantly, his hand reaching for the Winchester before he was fully awake. Years of training of sleeping light and waking ready. Sound outside. Horses. Multiple. Moving carefully but not carefully enough. He moved to the window and looked out. Torchlight in the distance bobbing as men on horseback approached. 800 yards away, maybe less. Coming from the south. Wade Carson's voice carried across the frozen air, amplified by the silence and the cold. "Fletcher, I know you're in there. We just want the girl. Send her out. You walk away." Owen's mind raced. They shouldn't have found the cabin this quickly. He'd covered his tracks, used every trick he knew. But Wade Carson was the best tracker in Colorado. If anyone could have followed them, it would be Wade. He turned to Iris, who was sitting up in bed, eyes wide. "Get dressed," he said quietly. "Warmest clothes you have. We're leaving now." "They found us already." "Faster than I thought. Wade's good." Owen moved with practiced efficiency, grabbing packs, loading them with essential supplies. Ammunition, dried meat, medical kit, fire-starting materials, 2 blankets each, everything else they would have to leave behind. He doused the fire, plunging the cabin into darkness. His eyes adjusted quickly, the starlight through the window providing just enough illumination to see. "Back window," he said. Quietly. Iris dressed quickly in layers. Wool shirt, wool pants borrowed from Owen and rolled up at the cuffs. Thick socks, boots. Owen's spare coat, too large but warm. They slipped out the back window into the 5-degree darkness. The stars overhead were brilliant, cold points of light in a black sky. No moon. Good for hiding, bad for traveling. Wade's men would reach the cabin in another 5 minutes. They would find it empty, would spend time searching. It would eventually pick up the trail. But every minute counted. Owen led Iris north into the high country, stepping carefully on rocks and exposed roots, leaving as little sign as possible. She followed in his exact footsteps, doing her best to match his movements. Behind them they heard shouts as Wade's men reached the cabin, the sound of the door being kicked in, angry voices when they found it empty, but Owen and Iris were already 200 yards away and moving fast. The hunt had begun. December 19th, 1878. 3:50 in the morning, 5 degrees above zero. Owen moved through the darkness like a ghost, his boots finding purchase on frozen ground that would leave no track. Behind him, Iris followed at exactly 6 feet distance, stepping where he stepped, moving when he moved, learning the rhythm of silent travel. The forest was absolute in its winter silence. No wind, no animals. Just the soft crunch of their boots on occasional patches of snow and the sound of their breath steaming in the frigid air. Owen used every technique he had learned in 20 years of tracking and being tracked. He stepped on rocks when possible, their surfaces too hard to show boot prints. He broke small branches at wrong angles, creating false trails that would lead pursuers in circles. Twice he doubled back on their own path, then split off at right angles, creating confusion in the sign. They crossed a narrow stream, the water running fast enough not to freeze cold enough to numb feet in seconds. The crossing broke any scent trail dogs might follow, though Owen doubted Wade would use dogs in this cold. Too hard to keep them working effectively below 10 degrees. 2 hours of careful movement brought them 3.8 miles from the cabin. Not fast, but fast wasn't the goal. Invisible was the goal. 6:15. The sky showed the first gray hints of approaching dawn. Owen found a boulder outcrop that provided shelter on 3 sides and signaled for a rest. Iris sank down gratefully, her breath coming hard. She was in good shape from years of physical labor, but this was different. This was survival movement, every muscle engaged, every sense alert. Owen pulled out a small brass telescope, an old cavalry model, and scanned their back trail. Nothing visible yet. Wade would wait for full daylight before tracking. Trying to follow sign in darkness was a good way to lose the trail completely. That gave them maybe 2 hours lead. Maybe. He handed Iris a piece of jerky. "Eat. Keep your strength up." She took it, chewing slowly. The jerky was tough, salty, but it was protein and her body needed it. "Do you see them?" she asked quietly. "Not yet. Wade will wait for daylight to track. Gives us maybe 2 hours lead." "Is that enough?" Owen looked at her, his face unreadable in the dim light. "No." She appreciated his honesty even as it frightened her. Owen pointed to a ridge in the distance, barely visible against the lightening sky. "See that ridge?" "Yes." "We'll be there by noon. From there we can see them coming from 3 directions. And the 4th. Cliff. 400-foot drop." Comforting. Owen handed her a canteen. "Drink. Small sips. We need to make this water last." While she drank, Owen's mind went back across the years to his training. He had spent 3 years learning tracking from the best scouts in the Colorado Territory. Apache methods, Cheyenne techniques lessons bought with experience and sometimes with blood. The key to being prey wasn't speed, it was thinking like prey. Knowing when to run, when to hide, when to double back and become the hunter. Wade was good, maybe the best tracker Owen had ever encountered besides himself. But Wade had learned from the same teachers Owen had. That meant Owen knew his patterns, knew how he thought, knew what he would look for. It was an advantage, small but real. They resumed moving as full dawn broke over the eastern peaks. The terrain grew steeper, rockier, harder to traverse but easier to hide tracks. Owen chose the difficult path deliberately. Wade would expect that. 7:22 in the morning. The cabin sat empty and cold, the door hanging open where Wade's men had kicked it in. Wade Carson stood in the center of the single room studying the scene with the careful attention of a professional tracker. 4 men stood with him, stamping their feet against the cold, eager to get moving, to do something besides stand around. Pike was 30-something, mean-faced and stupid, the kind of man who solved problems with violence because he lacked the imagination for anything else. He held a shotgun, 12-gauge, both barrels loaded. Donovan was older, maybe 40, with the bearing of an ex-Army man. Professional, competent, not particularly cruel, but not particularly merciful either. He carried a Henry rifle and knew how to use it. The young kid, maybe 20, nervous energy radiating off him like heat. This was his first real job, his first taste of violence, and he wasn't sure he liked it. His hands shook when he thought no one was looking. Henry was 50 drunk most of the time, only here because Wade paid better than honest work. He carried an old Springfield rifle and didn't much care who he pointed it at as long as the money was good. Wade studied the floor, the ashes in the fireplace, the items left behind. He spoke aloud, teaching his men, even as he worked, because good trackers were rare, and Wade believed in training when he could. Cabin abandoned at 3:45 in the morning, give or take 10 minutes. Fire was doused fast, but still warm when we arrived at 6. 2 people. Man's boot size 11, woman's size 7. Pike looked around. Which way'd they go? Wade pointed to the west, where broken branches and disturbed snow were obvious even in the dim light of the cabin. He wants us to think west. See the broken branches, too obvious. Fletcher's smarter than that. Donovan, who had been studying the tracks himself, nodded. So where? Wade walked to the back window and looked out at the ground below, faint impressions in the frost barely visible. North, toward high country. Harder terrain, but he knows it. We don't. Pike scratched his head. So we chase. Wade turned to look at him, and there was something like pity in his eyes for how simple Pike's thinking was. No, we think. Fletcher's going to Fort Collins, only place with federal marshals within 200 miles. That's 6 days north-northeast from here. We don't need to track every step. We need to get ahead of him. He pulled a map from his coat, old and creased from use, and spread it on the cabin's table. His finger traced possible routes. 3 routes to Fort Collins from here. Western Pass easy, but long 8 days. Eastern Valley fast, but exposed 5 days. Center Ridge difficult, but direct 6 days. Which will he take? Donovan asked, genuinely interested. Wade thought for a moment. Center Ridge. It's what I'd do. Hard terrain discourages pursuit. So we follow? No. Wade's finger moved on the map, marking positions. We split. Pike, Henry, you two take Western Pass. Get to Fort Collins, watch the approaches. Donovan, take the kid Eastern Valley route, same job. I'll track them on Center Ridge. Donovan studied the map. And if you're wrong about which route they took, then they walk into your arms in 5 days. Either way, they don't reach Fort Collins alive. Wade folded the map. Thomas Hartwell is paying us $500. I don't intend to disappoint him. After the others left, Wade stayed in the cabin alone for a few minutes. He was a tracker, yes, but he was also a reader of people. A cabin told stories if you knew how to listen. The medical supplies were organized with military precision. The books on the shelf were worn but well cared for. Plutarch, Marcus Aurelius. The meditations, not the reading material of a simple mountain man. The rifle maintenance kit was professional grade, everything clean and in its place. And then, in a drawer carefully folded, Wade found a child's dress. Small, made for a girl maybe 4 years old. Faded, but clean. Wade held it for a moment, his professional detachment cracking just slightly. He had a daughter himself somewhere back east. He sent money when he could, but hadn't seen her in 6 years. Hadn't held her since she was 3. You were a good Marshal Fletcher, Wade said quietly to the empty cabin. Shame you came back to the world. You should have stayed hidden. He folded the dress carefully and put it back exactly where he'd found it. Then he hardened himself again, pulled his professional mask back into place. But $500 is $500. He walked out into the cold morning and began to track. 2:15 in the afternoon, December 19th, 1878, 8 degrees. Owen and Iris stood on a small rise looking down at Granger River. The water was 40 feet wide, running fast with snowmelt and winter flow. Ice formed at the edges, but the center ran clear and quick, too fast to freeze. The sound of it was loud in the winter quiet, a constant roar that would mask other sounds. Good for hiding noise, bad for hearing pursuit. Owen studied the crossing for a long moment. The water temperature would be just above freezing, maybe 34 degrees. The air temperature was 18. A person could survive maybe 10 minutes in water that cold before hypothermia set in, maybe less if they were already tired and hungry. We have to cross, Owen said. Iris looked at the rushing water and felt fear settle into her stomach. That's suicide. Wade will be on our trail by now. River breaks the scent hides tracks. We cross or we die later." She wanted to argue to find another way, but she could see in his face that there wasn't one. This was survival math, cold and simple. "Can you swim?" Owen asked. "No." "Then don't go under." It wasn't comforting, but it was honest. Owen began stripping off his outer layers, explaining as he worked. "Strip to underclothes. Tie your clothes in a tight bundle. Hold it above your head as you cross. If you go under, let go of the bundle and swim for shore." "I just said I can't swim." "Then hold on to the rope and don't let go." He pulled a length of rope from his pack, good hemp rope, strong and flexible even in the cold. He tied one end around his waist and handed the other end to Iris. "Stay behind me. I'll break the current. If I fall, the rope will pull you too. Cut it if you have to and save yourself." Iris looked at the knife he offered her. "I'm not cutting the rope. That's not a request, that's an order." "You're not my marshal." Owen looked at her, and the ghost of a smile touched his lips despite the situation. "No, I'm not." They stripped to their underclothes, the cold immediately biting at exposed skin. Iris tried not to look at Owen's body, tried to preserve some sense of modesty, but she couldn't help noticing the scars. Bullet wounds, knife cuts, the marks of a violent life. Owen tied their clothes into tight bundles wrapped in oilcloth to keep them dry. Then he stepped into the water. The cold was immediate and absolute. Not like cold air, which you could endure, but cold that drove into your bones, that made your muscles seize, that stopped your breath in your chest. Owen gasped despite himself, then forced his breathing under control. He had been in cold water before. He knew the shock would pass in 30 seconds if he kept moving. He took another step. The water was 2 feet deep here, the current pulling hard at his legs. The rocks underfoot were slippery with algae and ice treacherous. Behind him, Iris stepped into the water and made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a scream. The cold was beyond anything she had experienced, beyond anything she had imagined possible. "Keep moving," Owen called back. "Don't stop. If you stop, you die." She forced her legs to move, to take another step, then another. The current pulled at her, trying to sweep her downstream. The rope around her waist was the only thing that felt solid, real. Halfway across. 3.5 feet deep now, chest high on Iris. The current was strongest here, the water moving at 8 miles per hour, pulling relentlessly. Owen's foot found a loose rock. It shifted under his weight. He tried to compensate, but the current was too strong. His legs went out from under him, and he went down. The water closed over his head, cold and dark. The current grabbed him and pulled him downstream. He felt the rope go taut as Iris took his weight. She should cut the rope. That was the smart play. Save herself. But Iris didn't cut the rope. She braced her feet against 2 rocks, gripped the rope with both hands, and pulled. Every muscle in her body screamed. The cold made her weak, made her clumsy, but she pulled anyway. Owen's head broke the surface 10 feet downstream. He gasped for air, got water instead, coughed and gasped again. His hands found the rope, and he pulled himself back to her. For a moment they stood together in the middle of the freezing river, both gasping, both shaking the current, trying its best to kill them. "Why didn't you cut it?" Owen managed to say. "Shut up and move," Iris said through chattering teeth. They made the final push together, reaching the far shore and collapsing on the frozen bank. The air temperature was 18 degrees, but it felt warm compared to the water. They lay there for maybe 30 seconds, which was 29 seconds too long. Hypothermia would kill them in minutes if they didn't act. Owen tried to get his hands working, tried to untie the bundle of dry clothes, but his fingers wouldn't obey. They were too cold, too numb, shaking too badly. Iris took over. Her hands were smaller, colder but steadier somehow. She untied the bundles and pulled out dry clothes. "Get dressed," she said. "Now." They dressed with fumbling fingers, putting on layers of wool and fur. It wasn't enough. They needed heat. "Fire," Owen said, his teeth chattering so hard he could barely speak. "Need fire." But his hands were shaking too much. He couldn't strike. The flint couldn't hold the steel steady. Iris remembered what he had taught her. Wax paper for tinder, pine needles for kindling. Strike the flint at an angle, catch the spark in the tinder. Her hands shook, but she forced them to work. Strike. Miss. Strike again. A spark caught. She blew gently, carefully nursing the tiny flame. The tinder caught. She added pine needles, then small twigs, then larger pieces. The fire grew. Owen moved closer to it, his whole body shaking. He had seen hypothermia before, had treated it, knew the stages. He was in stage 1, maybe early stage 2. Dangerous but survivable if he could get warm. Iris wrapped them both in the single dry blanket they had, sharing body heat, because that was survival, not romance. She could feel him shaking against her, could feel the cold radiating off his skin. They sat like that for 20 minutes, letting the fire drive the cold from their bones. Slowly, gradually, the shaking subsided. Feeling returned to fingers and toes, painful but welcome. "You could have died," Iris said quietly. Owen looked at the fire. "But didn't. Because I didn't cut the rope. You should have." "Why? So you could die heroically alone?" She turned to look at him. "That's selfish." Owen met her eyes, surprised. "Selfish? You want to punish yourself for your family. Dying doesn't fix that. Living does." He had no answer for that. She was right, and he knew it. His hand went to his pocket, touching the shape of the letter there. The letter from Abigail, 5 years old, carried every day since her death. He didn't pull it out, but Iris noticed the gesture. She didn't ask. Not yet. 7:40 in the evening. They made camp on a ridge at 9,200 feet elevation. The sky was clear, stars beginning to appear brilliant and cold. Clear nights meant colder temperatures. It would drop below 0 before morning. Owen had shot a squirrel earlier with his .22 caliber pistol, quiet enough not to carry far. It wasn't much meat, but it was protein, and it was warm. They sat close to their small fire, hidden in a depression between rocks, so the smoke would disperse, eating roasted squirrel and feeling exhaustion settle into their bones. "Tell me about your daughter," Iris said. Owen stiffened. "Why?" "Because you never say her name. My grandmother taught me that grief you don't speak owns you." He was quiet for a long time. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the distance an owl called. "Emma," Owen said finally. "Her name was Emma Rose Fletcher." "How old was she?" 4 years, 2 months, 8 days. The precision of it showed he had counted every moment. "She had red hair like her mother, laughed at everything. Birds, clouds, her own feet. Everything was magic to her." "She sounds wonderful." She was. Owen's voice was rough. "And I wasn't there when she needed me. You were doing your job. My job was to be her father first, Marshall second. I got it backwards." Iris shifted closer, the blanket wrapped around both of them. "I understand guilt. When May was dying, I wanted to run. Get away from my family, start over somewhere new, but she begged me to stay until the end, said she needed me." She looked down at her hands. "I stayed, but I resented it. Every day watching her fade, I thought, why can't this be over? And then it was. And I hated myself for wishing it." "That's not the same," Owen said. "Isn't it? We both chose wrong when it mattered. You stayed. That's choosing right. But I thought wrong." Owen turned to look at her fully. "Thoughts aren't sins. Actions are." They sat in silence for a while, both lost in their own memories. Then Iris asked, "The papers May left. Did you read them?" "Briefly. Land titles, names, payments. I'm not a lawyer, but it looks like fraud." 47 families, Iris said. "May had names of every family that lost land to my father and Judge Blackstone. Dates, amounts, forged signatures." "Why did May have all this?" "She was the judge's housekeeper for 15 years before my mother married father. May cleaned his office, saw the papers, started copying them secretly. But she was Cherokee. In 1878, who would believe a Cherokee woman over a white judge?" Owen's face hardened. "No one. So she waited, gathered evidence. Then when she got sick, when she knew she was dying, she gave them to me. Told me to find someone trustworthy." She sent you to me. Her letter said you were the only honest marshal she ever knew. I'm not a marshal anymore. But you're honest. Owen thought about that. I try. Then help me finish what May started. Get these papers to Fort Collins. Let the federal court handle it. And then what? Where will you go? Iris looked at the fire. I haven't had a home in 10 years. I'll figure something out. Owen wanted to say something, wanted to offer her a place, a home, a future. But it was too soon, too uncertain. They might both be dead in 3 days. The wind picked up, dropping the temperature to 4 degrees. Iris shivered despite the blanket. Come here, Owen said. What? He opened his coat. Body heat. Survival. She hesitated, then moved closer. He wrapped the coat around both of them, his body heat mixing with hers in the small space. It was practical, necessary, but it was also intimate in a way that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with trust. You smell like pine and smoke, Iris said quietly. You smell like river water and fear. She laughed softly. Romantic. Honest. They sat like that as the stars wheeled overhead, as the temperature dropped, as exhaustion finally overcame caution. Iris's head settled against Owen's shoulder. His chin rested on top of her head. Owen, she said, half asleep. Yeah. If we die tomorrow, I want you to know I'm glad it was you who found me. Owen looked down at her, at this woman who had survived freezing and pursuit and river crossings without breaking, who had saved his life when she could have saved herself. We're not dying tomorrow, he said. But if we do, we won't. She looked up at him. Their faces were inches apart. The moment hung between them, fragile and real. Owen kissed her, gentle, brief, then pulled back. Get some sleep, he said. Iris smiled. That's all, for now. December 20th, 1878, 11:30 in the morning. Owen and Iris moved through dense pine forest, their breath fogging in the cold air. The sun was bright but provided little warmth. Temperature hovered around 20 degrees. The crack of the rifle shot split the silence like breaking ice. Tree bark exploded 6 inches from Owen's head, splinters flying. He grabbed Iris and pulled her down as a second shot hit a rock near her feet. Run! Owen shouted. They sprinted through the trees, weaving, using trunks for cover. The shooter was good. Very good firing from long range with accuracy that spoke of professional skill. Wade Carson reloaded his Sharps .50 caliber rifle. 650 yards. Not an easy shot, especially in this cold, but he had hit close twice. The third shot would count. Owen and Iris reached a boulder field and dove behind cover. For a moment, silence. Then Wade's voice carrying across the distance. Fletcher. You're good, but not that good. I found you. Owen pressed his back against a boulder, breathing hard. He had known Wade would catch up eventually, had hoped it would take longer, but Wade Carson didn't become the best tracker in Colorado by being slow. Stay low, Owen told Iris. He risked a look around the boulder. Wade was up on a ridge maybe 700 yards now, with high ground and a rifle that was effective to 800 yards. Owen's Winchester was good to 400 on a good day. They were outgunned and outmaneuvered. I don't want to kill you, Fletcher, Wade called. Just the girl. Walk away. Owen pulled back behind cover. Not happening. Why, you don't even know her. I know enough. Wade's voice again, closer now. The man was moving, trying to flank them. $500, Fletcher. That's what Hartwell's paying. I'll split it with you. $250 each. Just walk away. Iris looked at Owen, fear in her eyes. You could. Save yourself. No. Why not? You owe me nothing. Owen met her gaze. Yes, I do. I owe you the chance I didn't give my own family. To be there when it matters. The tactical situation was bad. Wade had them pinned with superior position and superior firepower. They couldn't run because open ground meant death. They couldn't stay because Wade would work his way around to a killing angle. They couldn't fight because they were outgunned. Can you shoot? Owen asked. No. Learn fast. He handed her his Colt .45. On my signal, fire 3 shots in Wade's direction. Don't aim, just shoot loud, then run north through those trees. Don't stop. What about you? I'm going to circle around, come at him from the side. That's suicide. Owen looked at her hard. It's the only way. He explained the timing. Count to 60, then shoot and run. Don't look back. He slipped away, moving low and fast, using every scrap of cover. Iris counted her hands, shaking the pistol heavy and unfamiliar. 60 seconds. She stood, pointed the pistol roughly toward where Wade's voice had come from, and fired 3 times. The recoil shocked her, the noise deafening, but she held on and pulled the trigger 3 times. Then she ran. Wade saw movement, swung his rifle, fired. The bullet hit a tree 2 feet from Iris's head. She kept running, zigzagging like Owen had taught her. Wade cursed and reloaded. The Sharps was single-shot, powerful but slow. By the time he had the next round chambered, the girl was in the trees. Then a shot came from a completely different direction. Owen 200 yards to Wade's left, firing from cover. The bullet hit Wade's rifle stock, cracking the wood, making the weapon buck in his hands. Wade spun dove for cover behind a fallen tree. He had underestimated Fletcher. The man hadn't panicked, hadn't made the obvious play. He'd used the girl as a distraction and flanked. Professional recognized professional. "Impressive, Fletcher," Wade called out. "You haven't lost your touch. Neither have you. But I'm not the one protecting a civilian." Wade was right. This could go on until dark, and then it became a waiting game that Owen couldn't win. He had to protect Iris, had to keep moving toward Fort Collins. Wade just had to slow them down until reinforcements arrived or they made a mistake. Then Wade said something that changed everything. "Fletcher, real talk, I tracked you for 2 days. You're the best I've ever chased, better than the Apache scouts, better than anyone." Owen didn't respond, trying to locate Wade's exact position by voice. "Which is why I'm offering one more time. Take $300 and walk away. I'll tell Hartwell you died too. You and the girl disappear. Everyone wins." Owen made his decision, except the 47 families who lost their land. Silence from Wade's position. Then, what families? The ones Hartwell and Blackstone stole from. That's why he wants her dead. She has proof. Another silence, longer this time. Proof of what? Land fraud. 5 years of forged titles. Theft. Your employer isn't just a land developer, he's a criminal. Wade crouched behind his cover, his mind racing. Hartwell had told him the girl was a runaway, hysterical, dangerous. Had said she'd stolen family documents and needed to be stopped before she hurt herself or others. Hartwell had lied. Wade hated being lied to. It was a matter of professional pride. You paid him for a job, you told him the truth about the job. You lied, the contract was void. Hartwell said she was a runaway, Wade called back. Said she was dangerous. He lied. She has documented evidence. We're taking it to Fort Collins Federal Marshals. Wade crouched behind his cover, his mind racing. $500 was good money, the best payday he'd had in 2 years. But Hartwell had lied to him, called the girl hysterical, dangerous, a thief. None of that was true. She was a witness, an innocent witness with proof of real crimes. Wade had rules, 2 of them. Don't kill innocents. Don't work for liars. Hartwell had just broken both. He thought of his own daughter back east. What if someone was hunting her for telling the truth? What if someone was trying to silence her for being brave? The money didn't matter anymore. "Fletcher, where's the girl now?" "Safe." Wade stood up, fully visible, weapons lowered. A sign of peace, or at least of parley. "Then here's my offer. I'm leaving. I'm not tracking you anymore, but I'm not helping you either. You're on your own." Owen stood as well, still cautious. "That's it. I don't kill innocents, and I don't protect thieves." Hartwell lied. "Contracts void." Then Wade added, "But Fletcher, Pike, and Henry are heading to Fort Collins, western route. Donovan and the kid are on Eastern Valley. They don't know what I know. They'll still try to kill you." "Noted. And Hartwell will send more. This doesn't end until he's in jail or dead." "I know." Wade tipped his hat in Owen's direction. "Good luck, Fletcher. You'll truly need it." He turned and walked away, disappearing into the trees. Actually walked away. Iris emerged from cover, cautious. "He's gone." "Yeah." "Why?" "Professional ethics. He doesn't work for liars." "Can we trust him?" Owen thought about it. "No, but he won't hunt us anymore. That's enough." 6:15 in the evening. A new camp hidden in a ravine that provided shelter from wind and concealment from searching eyes. Fire, food, exhaustion settling into their bones like cold. Iris watched Owen across the flames. He had saved her life multiple times now, had risked himself again and again. But there was a distance in him, a wall she couldn't quite get past. "What you said to Wade," she began, "about your family. Was that true? Is that why you're helping me?" Owen looked up. "Partly." "What's the other part?" He hesitated. "May's last words to me were, 'You can't bring them back, but you can save someone else. That's how you honor them.'" Iris felt something cold settle in her chest. "So I'm what penance?" "No. You're a person who deserves to live." "But would you care if May hadn't asked?" Owen was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. Maybe not." The honesty hurt more than a lie would have. "So this is obligation," Iris said. "Duty." "It started that way. And now it's more complicated." Iris stood up, anger flashing in her eyes. "I don't want to be your second chance. I don't want to be the person who fixes your guilt. That's not. Isn't it? You said it yourself. You owe me the chance you didn't give your family. I'm a replacement." "You're not a replacement. You're..." "What? Tell me, what am I to you?" Owen had no answer. Not one he could put into words. Iris felt tears threaten but refused to let them fall. "I thought maybe you actually cared. Not about May's debt, not about your guilt. About me." "I do care." "Then say it. Say I matter beyond obligation." "You do. Prove it." Silence stretched between them like a chasm. "I can't," Owen said quietly. Iris turned away, wrapping her arms around herself. "Tomorrow we reach Fort Collins. We deliver the papers. Then we go our separate ways. You go back to your mountain. I'll figure out my life. Deal?" "Iris." "Deal." Owen felt something break inside his chest. "Deal." She walked to the far side of the camp and sat with her back to him. The silence was absolute except for the crackling fire. Owen sat alone, staring into the flames, wondering how he had managed to survive bullets and cold and pursuit only to be defeated by simple honesty. The answer, he thought, was that he had spent 5 years learning how to survive everything except living. Meanwhile, in Denver, events were moving that would change everything. Thomas Hartwell paced his study, drunk and desperate. The telegram lay on his desk like an accusation. "Contract terminated. Stop. Fletcher and girl alive. Stop. Do not contact again. Stop. Carson." He had read it 20 times and it still made no sense. Wade Carson didn't terminate contracts. Wade Carson finished jobs. That was why Thomas paid him premium rates. Judge Blackstone sat in the corner more drunk than Thomas, his hands shaking. "What do we do?" "Pike and Henry are still out there," Thomas said. "Donovan too. They'll stop them." "And if they don't?" "If Fletcher reaches Fort Collins..." Thomas stopped pacing. "Then we have 48 hours to disappear before federal marshals arrive." "Disappear where?" "Mexico. I have $20,000 in the Denver bank. We take it across the border, start over." Blackstone's eyes widened. "What about our families?" Thomas's face hardened. "What about them?" The door opened. Eleanor Hartwell stood there, her face pale. She had heard everything. "You're leaving us." Her voice was barely a whisper. Thomas turned, startled. "Eleanor, leaving me and the girls to face the authorities, to hang for your crimes." "It won't come to that. You poisoned May. You tried to kill Iris, and now you'll run like a coward." Eleanor's voice grew stronger with each word. Thomas crossed the room and grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "You'll say nothing." Eleanor tried to pull free. "Or what? You'll kill me too." Thomas raised his hand to strike her. "Father, stop!" Victoria stood in the doorway, 25 years old and beautiful and cold. Behind her, Lillian hovered uncertain. Thomas lowered his hand slowly. "Mother," Victoria said calmly, "go upstairs." Eleanor left crying. Victoria looked at her father, at the judge, at the telegram on the desk. She was smart, observant. She could read the situation. "Father," she said carefully, "if what Mother heard is true, we need to talk." 2:30 in the morning. December 21st. Iris couldn't sleep. She sat by the dying fire, watching embers pulse like heartbeats. Across the camp, Owen lay with his back to her, pretending to sleep. She knew he was pretending because his breathing was wrong, too controlled. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, "for what I said earlier." Owen sat up. "You weren't wrong. I was cruel. You're helping me. That's enough." "It's not enough. You deserve more than obligation." He moved to sit beside her, close enough to share warmth, but not touching. "5 years ago," he said, "my wife wrote me a letter, the day before she died. I didn't get it until after the funeral." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn soft from being carried, and read countless times. "I've carried this every day since, read it every morning. It's why I came down from the mountain when May asked. It's why I couldn't abandon you." He handed it to her. "Read it." Iris unfolded the letter carefully. The handwriting was elegant, feminine, shaking in places where emotion had made the hand unsteady. "My dearest Owen, if you are reading this, I am gone. And I know you. You are blaming yourself. Stop. You did not kill us. Fate did. God did. Bad luck did. But not you. You were a good husband. A good father. You hunted outlaws to keep Emma safe, to keep all families safe. That is honor, not sin. I am writing this because I know you will quit. You will run. You will hide from the world because you think you failed. Do not. Live, Owen. Truly live. Find someone to protect again. Find someone to love again. Do not let our deaths kill you too. Emma would want you to laugh again. I want you to love again. Forgive yourself. And when the time comes, help someone who needs it. That is how you honor us, not by dying slowly on a mountain, but by living fully in the world. I love you, always. Abigail. Iris was crying before she finished reading. She folded the letter carefully and handed it back. "She sounds wonderful." She was, and she was right. "I've been dying slowly for 5 years. Is that why you saved me, because of her letter?" "At first, yes, but then I saw you, tied to a tree, freezing but still defiant, still fighting, and I thought this person deserves to live, not because May asked, not because of Abigail's letter, but because you're worth it." Iris looked at him. "You really believe that?" "Yes, you're brave, you're smart, you don't give up. You make me want to be alive again, not just surviving, alive." She moved closer to him, their faces inches apart. "I can't promise you safety," Owen said, "or a future. We might die tomorrow." "I know. But I can promise you this. I care. Not from obligation. Not from guilt. I care about you, Iris Hartwell, not as penance, as a person." That's all I needed to hear. She kissed him. Longer this time, with real emotion behind it. When they pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "We reach Fort Collins tomorrow by dark," Owen said. "Deliver papers to the Federal Marshal Office. Then if you want, you could stay. At the ranch. With me." "The cabin." "I have more land, 60 acres, enough for a real house, cattle, a life. Are you asking me to marry you?" "I'm asking if you'd consider it, eventually, when this is over." Iris smiled. "Yes, I'd consider it." They sat together as the stars wheeled overhead, as the fire died to ash, as dawn approached with all its promises and dangers. Tomorrow they would face whatever came. But tonight For the first time in 5 years, Owen Fletcher felt something besides grief. He felt hope. December 21st, 1878, 3:45 in the afternoon. Owen and Iris stood on a ridge overlooking the valley below. Fort Collins spread out beneath them 2.8 miles distant, looking small and civilized and impossibly safe from their vantage point. The town held maybe 400 souls. Owen could see the Federal Marshal Office, clearly a stone building with the American flag hanging limp in the still air. Telegraph office next to it. 2 saloons, a general store, a hotel with fresh paint. Smoke rose from chimneys in thin gray lines. Safety. So close, Owen could almost taste it. But something was wrong. "What is it?" Iris asked, seeing the tension in his shoulders. "Too quiet. No activity on the North Road." Owen pulled out his brass telescope and scanned the approaches. Pike and Henry should have reached town yesterday if they took the western route. Maybe they gave up? Maybe. Owen moved the telescope slowly, methodically checking every approach to town. Or maybe they're waiting. He found them. North Road, 2 men on horses positioned where they could watch anyone approaching from the mountains. Pike's bulky form was unmistakable even at this distance. Henry beside him, probably already drunk despite the early hour. East Trail, 1 man at the river crossing. Donovan, professional and patient, his rifle across his saddle. The south route was clear, but it meant crossing 2 miles of open plain with no cover, a shooting gallery for anyone watching. "They're covering every approach," Owen said quietly. "Waiting for us." Iris felt fear settle cold in her stomach. "What do we do?" Owen studied the terrain, calculating angles and distances and risks. "We wait for dark. Come in from the south after sunset, less visible. And if they're watching the south too, then we deal with it." They found shelter in a cluster of rocks and settled in to wait. 4 hours until sunset. 4 hours of cold and tension, and knowing that the next few hours would determine whether they lived or died. 8:15 in the evening. Full dark. Temperature 12 degrees. Owen and Iris moved across the open ground toward Fort Collins, staying low, moving in rushes from one slight depression to another. The town lights ahead looked warm and welcoming, deadly if they were being watched. They were halfway across when Pike stepped out from a hidden position in a shallow ditch. He had been lying in wait for hours, patient as a spider, and now his patience paid off. "Got 'em," Pike's voice carried across the frozen ground. "They're here." He raised his shotgun. Owen shoved Iris hard to the left and dove right as both barrels roared. Buckshot sprayed the ground where they had been standing a heartbeat before. Owen came up firing his Winchester, barking 3 times. Pike went down, hit center mass, and didn't move again. But Pike's shout had done its work. Henry appeared from the north, riding hard, his rifle up. Donovan came from the east, moving with professional calm, taking up a position that gave him clear lines of fire. Owen and Iris were pinned in open ground with 3 enemies and 90 yards to the nearest cover, a general store at the edge of town. "When I say run," Owen told Iris, "you run straight for that building. Don't stop. Don't look back." "What about you?" "I'll be right behind you." He stood and fired rapidly, not aiming carefully but laying down suppressive fire, forcing the enemies to take cover, to duck, to hesitate. "Run!" Iris sprinted. 90 yards never felt so long. Every step she expected a bullet in the back, expected to feel the impact and the pain and the darkness. Henry fired at her and missed, his aim ruined by alcohol and poor light. Owen put a round through Henry's shoulder, and the man dropped his rifle with a scream, wheeling his horse away. Donovan fired at Owen. The bullet caught him in the left arm, a graze, but painful blood immediately soaking through his coat. Owen kept moving, diving behind a water trough, returning fire. Iris reached the building and pressed herself against the wall, gasping for breath. Donovan called out from his position. "Fletcher, you're hit. I saw blood." Owen pressed his hand against the wound. It was bleeding, but not arterially. Painful, but survivable. Flesh wound. "You can't win. Give up the girl. I'll let you live." "Pass." Then we wait. You'll bleed out in an hour." Donovan was right. Owen could feel the blood running down his arm, warm and wet. He needed to end this fast. Then new gunfire erupted from an unexpected direction. A rifle shot from a rooftop in town. The bullet hit the ground 2 feet from Donovan's position, kicking up dirt. Wade Carson stood on the roof of the general store, his Sharps rifle at his shoulder. "Donovan, stand down!" Donovan's head snapped up in shock. "Carson, what the hell are you doing?" "Contract's off. Hartwell lied, girl's innocent." "I don't care. $500 is $500. Wade fired again, closer this time. "Not anymore. I'm testifying against Hartwell. Girl has evidence. You kill her. You hang for murder." Donovan was no fool. He could read a situation. Wade Carson on a rooftop with a long rifle changed the tactical picture completely. And if Wade was willing to testify, willing to burn Hartwell, then the job had gone from simple bounty work to potential murder charges. Donovan lowered his rifle. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. Federal marshals are coming tomorrow. Town doctors treating the wounded. You want to be here when the law arrives?" Donovan thought for maybe 5 seconds. Then he turned his horse and rode away at a gallop, disappearing into the darkness. Henry was already gone, bleeding and frightened. Pike was dead. Wade climbed down from the roof and walked over to where Owen crouched behind the water trough. Iris emerged cautiously from the building. "You owe me," Wade said. Owen pressed his hand harder against the wound in his arm. "Why did you help?" "Professional curiosity. Wanted to see if you'd make it." Wade shrugged. "Plus, I don't like being lied to. Hartwell's finished." "Just like that." "Just like that. Now get to the doctor. That arm needs stitches." Wade tipped his hat to both of them and walked away into the darkness, his boots crunching on frozen ground. Then he was gone, swallowed by shadow. Iris helped Owen to his feet. "Can we trust him?" "No, but he won't hunt us anymore." Owen swayed slightly, blood loss making him dizzy. "That's enough." 9:30 in the evening. Federal Marshal Office. Marshal James Crawford sat behind a scarred wooden desk that had seen 20 years of service. He was 50-something, gray-haired, with the weathered face of a man who had spent most of his life outdoors in all weather. His eyes were sharp and clear despite his age. Owen sat across from him, his left arm freshly stitched and bandaged by the town doctor. Iris sat beside him. May's papers spread across the desk between them. Crawford read in silence for 20 minutes. He was thorough-checking dates, cross-referencing names, making notes on a separate piece of paper. His expression grew grimmer with each page. Finally, he sat back and looked at them both. "This is extensive. 47 families, 5 years, over $200,000 in fraud." Iris leaned forward. "Can you arrest them?" "I can. I will. But I need your testimony, both of you. Formal deposition tonight. Trial in Denver 3 weeks from now." "We'll testify," Owen said. Crawford studied Owen for a long moment. "You're Owen Fletcher. Used to be a marshal out of the Denver office." "Was. I quit 5 years ago." "I remember why. Your family. I'm sorry for your loss." Crawford's voice was genuine. "But your record was exemplary. We could use you back. The offer's open if you want it." "I'm retired." "Retired at 33, waste of talent." Owen glanced at Iris. "I have other plans." Crawford followed his gaze and understood. "I see. Well, the offer stands if you change your mind." He stood and walked to a large map on the wall marked with territorial boundaries and martial jurisdictions. "I'm sending telegrams to Denver tonight. Arrest warrants for Thomas Hartwell and Judge Henry Blackstone. Attempted murder, conspiracy, land fraud." "How long until they're arrested?" Iris asked. Crawford pulled out his pocket watch. "Telegram arrives in Denver by midnight. Federal marshals there will move at dawn. If Hartwell and Blackstone are home, they'll be in custody by noon tomorrow. And if they run, then we hunt them, but they won't get far. Mexico border is 8 days' ride, and we'll have every marshal between here and there watching for them." Over the next 2 hours, Crawford took detailed depositions. Iris recounted finding the papers, showing them to her father, the imprisonment, the attempt on her life. Owen described the rescue, the pursuit, Wade's involvement, the attacks. Crawford wrote it all down in careful script, asking questions, clarifying details, building a case that would stand up in federal court. At midnight, he sent the telegrams. Owen and Iris watched through the window as the telegraph operator tapped out the message in Morse code, each click carrying their testimony across hundreds of miles of wire. Crawford offered them rooms at the hotel paid for by the federal government, clean beds, hot baths, real food, luxuries after days of running and hiding and freezing. As they left the office, Crawford called after them. "You should know if Hartwell and Blackstone are convicted, the land will be returned to the rightful owners. Those 47 families will get their property back. What you're doing here, it matters." Iris nodded, feeling something tight in her chest loosen slightly. May's years of secret record-keeping hadn't been in vain. December 22nd, 1878. 6 in the morning. The response telegram arrived just after dawn. Hartwell and Blackstone fled. Stop, last seen, heading south. Stop, pursuing, stop. Crawford showed it to Owen and Iris over breakfast at the hotel. "They ran," Crawford said. "Cowards." Owen studied the telegram. "Will you catch them?" "If they're smart, they're already in Mexico. If not, we'll have them within a week. I've sent descriptions and warrants to every marshal station between here and the border." Iris felt something she hadn't expected. Not satisfaction or relief, but sadness. Her father was a criminal and a murderer, but he was still her father. Some part of her had hoped he might stay and face justice with dignity. "There's one more thing," Iris said quietly. "My grandmother's death. I believe my father poisoned her to keep her quiet about the land fraud." Crawford's expression hardened. "Do you have proof?" "No, just timing. She was healthy, then she threatened to expose him, then she suddenly got sick and died. Without proof, I can't add murder charges. But if we catch him, if he talks, sometimes men confess when they've lost everything else." Crawford folded the telegram and put it in his pocket. "You're both free to go. Trial's in 3 weeks, January 12th. Be in Denver by then. In the meantime, stay safe. If Hartwell's desperate enough to hire more men, I want you somewhere he can't find you." Owen nodded. "We will be." 3 weeks later, January 12, 1879, Denver Courthouse. The courtroom was packed. 200 people or more, standing room only. Press reporters filled the front rows, their pencils scratching across notepads. The families whose land had been stolen sat together, 47 households, united in their grief and anger and hope for justice. Iris sat in the witness chair, her hands folded in her lap, her voice steady as she testified. She told them about May's years as housekeeper, about the secret copying of documents, about the papers hidden in the Bible. She told them about showing the papers to her father, about the violence that followed, about the cellar, and Wade Carson and the tree. The courtroom was absolutely silent as she spoke. Even the reporters stopped writing to listen. When the prosecutor asked about her grandmother's death, Iris's voice finally wavered. "I believe my father poisoned her. She was healthy until she threatened to expose his crimes. Then she got sick. The doctor said it was natural causes, but I know better. My father killed her to protect himself." The gallery erupted in angry murmurs. The judge gavelled for silence. Owen testified next. He described the rescue, the pursuit, the river crossing, the attempts on their lives. He spoke with military precision, giving times and distances and exact details that painted a picture of systematic attempted murder. Wade Carson testified, surprising everyone by showing up voluntarily. He admitted he had been hired to kill Iris. Admitted he had tracked them for days, admitted everything. "But when I learned Hartwell had lied to me," Wade said, his voice carrying clearly through the courtroom, "when I learned the girl was innocent and the documents were proof of real crimes, I terminated my contract. I don't kill innocents." The defense attorney tried to discredit him. "You're a hired killer testifying to save yourself from prosecution." Wade looked at the attorney with cold eyes. "I'm a tracker. Sometimes that tracking ends in death. But I have rules. I don't kill innocents. I don't work for liars. Hartwell broke both rules. Then came the families. 47 testimonies, one after another, each telling the same story. Land bought in good faith titles that seemed legitimate. Then sudden evictions, when Judge Blackstone declared the titles forged and awarded the land to Thomas Hartwell for resale. Life savings lost. Homes destroyed. Children left hungry. By the end of the second day of testimony, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Thomas Hartwell sat at the defense table sweating despite the cool January air. He had been captured in Santa Fe, New Mexico, just miles from the Mexican border. 3 weeks of running had aged him 10 years. His face was gray, his hands shaking, his expensive suit rumpled and stained. Judge Blackstone was dead. Heart attack during the capture attempt. Some said it was fear. Some said it was guilt. Either way, he had escaped earthly justice. The trial lasted 3 days. The verdict took the jury 40 minutes. The judge, a federal appointee from Washington, read the verdict in a voice that carried to every corner of the packed courtroom. Thomas Hartwell, you have been found guilty on 47 counts of land fraud, 3 counts of attempted murder, and 1 count of conspiracy. You are hereby sentenced to hang by the neck until dead. Sentence to be carried out February 1st, 1879. The judge paused, then added, while the court lacks sufficient evidence to prosecute the murder of May Winterhawk, let the record show that this court believes, based on circumstantial evidence and testimony, that Thomas Hartwell was responsible for her death. May God have mercy on his soul for all his crimes proven and suspected. The courtroom erupted. Families crying with relief. Reporters scrambling for the doors to file their stories. Thomas Hartwell screaming as bailiffs dragged him from the courtroom. Iris. His voice cut through the noise. You destroyed your own family. You're dead to me. Iris stood, her voice calm and clear. I was dead to you long before this. Now you'll know how it feels. Outside the courthouse, Eleanor Hartwell waited with Victoria and Lillian. They stood apart from the celebrating families, isolated in their shame and loss. Eleanor approached Iris slowly, her face drawn and tired. You've destroyed us. We have nothing. She paused, then added quietly, but perhaps we deserved it. I knew what he was. I knew, and I said nothing. Iris met her mother's eyes without flinching. You have yourselves. That's more than I ever had from you. Victoria stepped forward, and there was something different in her face, something like understanding, or maybe regret. Father killed May, didn't he? Iris nodded. Yes, I suspected, but I was too afraid to ask. Victoria looked down. I'm sorry, Iris, for how we treated you. You deserved better. Yes, I did. Can you forgive us? Iris thought about that for a long moment, about the years of cruelty, the casual dismissals, the constant message that she was worthless, about the coldness and the emptiness and the loneliness. I don't know yet, she said finally, but I'm willing to try. Someday. Eleanor reached out as if to touch Iris, then let her hand fall. What will you do now? Live. Something I should have been allowed to do all along. Iris turned and walked away. Owen waited at the bottom of the courthouse steps, his hat in his hands. They walked together into the Denver afternoon, leaving the Hartwell family behind. February 1880, Fletcher Ranch, 1 year later. The house stood 2 stories tall, built of pine logs, chinked with good mortar, with real glass windows that caught the afternoon sun and threw it back in brilliant flashes. It sat on a small rise overlooking a valley where 60 head of cattle grazed on winter grass. Owen had built it himself over the summer and fall, with help from Jacob Mills and 4 hired hands. Every board placed with care, every nail driven true. A house meant to last, meant to hold a family. Iris stood in the schoolhouse, a smaller building 50 yards from the main house. 15 children sat at rough wooden desks, ages ranging from 6 to 14. Children of the ranch workers, children of neighboring homesteaders, all learning to read and write and cipher. Mrs. Fletcher? A young girl raised her hand. "Why do you teach us for free?" Iris looked up from the slate board where she had been writing arithmetic problems. "Because knowledge is freedom, Sarah, and no one should be denied freedom." The girl nodded satisfied and bent back over her work. Through the window, Iris could see Owen working with Jacob Mills, the two of them framing out a new barn. Even from this distance, she could see the easy rhythm of their work, the way they moved together after months of partnership. Jacob was 60 now, walking with a slight limp from an old gunshot wound, but his hands were still steady and his friendship was solid. He had been Owen's partner during the Marshall years, had stood beside him through good times and bad. "You seem happy, Owen," Jacob said, pausing to wipe sweat from his forehead despite the February chill. Owen hammered another nail home, the sound sharp in the clear air. "I am. Thought you'd sworn off caring about people." "I was wrong. Caring is what makes life worth living." Jacob smiled. Abigail would be proud. Owen looked toward the house, toward the school where Iris taught, toward the life they had built together over the past year. "I think so too." Evening. The sun settled toward the western peaks, painting the sky orange and purple and gold. Owen and Iris sat on the porch of their house watching the light fade. Iris's hand rested on her belly, visibly swollen with 6 months of pregnancy. "She's kicking," Iris said, smiling. Owen placed his hand beside hers, feeling the small movements beneath the skin. "Active, like her mother." "You think it's a girl?" "Hope so. Want to name her Emma after my daughter." Iris felt tears prick her eyes. "You'd want that?" "I'd be honored." Owen's voice was thick with emotion. "Emma Rose Fletcher. A new beginning." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the cattle settle for the night, watching smoke rise from the workers' cabins, watching their world prepare for darkness. "Owen," Iris said quietly. "I never asked. Why did my father hate me so much? I know my mother had Cherokee blood, but there was more, wasn't there?" Owen had been waiting for this question for months. He had promised May he would tell Iris the truth when she was ready. He thought she was ready now. "I found out during the trial. Your mother Eleanor, she wasn't Thomas's first choice. He was engaged to another woman, May's daughter, your real mother." Iris turned to look at him, shock clear on her face. "May was my grandmother through my real mother." "Yes. Your mother's name was Grace. She died giving birth to you. Eleanor was her cousin. Thomas married her to raise you, but every time he looked at you, he saw the woman he had truly loved, the one he lost. He resented you for surviving when she didn't." Iris absorbed this, tears running down her cheeks. "All this time I reminded him of my real mother. May told me before she died, made me promise to tell you when you were ready. Your mother was Cherokee like May, beautiful, kind, smart, everything you are. And Thomas hated me for it." Owen pulled her close. "He hated himself. You were just the reminder." They sat holding each other as the stars began to appear, as the temperature dropped, as the world turned toward night. "It doesn't change anything," Iris said finally. "But at least I understand now." Understanding is healing. 38 years later. September 14, 1920. Owen Fletcher, 75 years old, finished his story. The afternoon sun slanted across the porch, warm and golden, painting everything in soft light. His grandson James sat silent, his notepad covered with scribbled notes, his young face showing the impact of the tale. "And Grandma Iris?" James asked quietly. "Where is she?" Owen's face showed the weight of grief, old but still sharp. "Passed 2 years ago, influenza. But we had 38 years together. 3 children, 7 grandchildren. More happiness than I deserved." "What happened to Thomas Hartwell?" "Hanged. February 1st, 1879, as sentenced. I didn't attend. Iris did. She said she needed to see it end. And the families, the 47. Got their land back. Most of them thrived. Some didn't. But they got justice. That mattered." James was quiet for a moment, then asked the question Owen had been waiting for. "Why are you telling me this now, Granddad?" Owen looked at his grandson, seeing himself at 17, young and full of certainty and unaware of how quickly life could change. "Because you're 17, same age I was when I decided to become a marshal. You'll make choices soon, big ones. And I want you to know it's never too late to do the right thing, even if you failed before, even if you've lost everything." "You mean like you failing your first family?" "Exactly. I failed Emma and Abigail. But I didn't let that failure define my whole life. I found Iris, built a new family, helped 47 families get justice. That's redemption, not forgetting the past, but not letting it kill your future." James looked down at his notes at the story spread across the pages. "What should I do with my life?" Owen stood slowly, his joints stiff with age, and picked up the old Winchester 1873. The same rifle that had been with him for nearly 50 years. He held it out to James. "Whatever makes you feel alive, not just surviving, alive. Find someone worth protecting, something worth fighting for. And when you fail, and you will fail, get back up. That's all any of us can do." James took the rifle, feeling its weight, its history. Owen looked out at the ranch, at the mountains beyond, at the life he had built from the ashes of his grief. Workers moved between buildings. Children played in the yard. Smoke rose from chimneys, life continuing generation after generation. "They sent her to me as a joke," Owen said quietly. "The unwanted daughter, the burden. Your grandmother's family thought they were punishing both of us." He smiled, and there was something peaceful in his weathered face. "But she was my redemption, my second chance, my last chance to get it right." "And did you?" James asked. Owen thought about Iris, about 38 years of marriage, of partnership, of love that grew deeper with each passing year, about the children they had raised, the life they had built, the good they had done in the world, about May's papers that had brought justice to 47 families, about Wade Carson, who had chosen honor over money, about himself learning to live again instead of just surviving. "Yes," Owen said, "I did." The sun touched the western peaks, painting them gold and red. The day was ending, but there would be another tomorrow. There always was. James stood beside his grandfather, the old rifle in his hands, the story of redemption fresh in his mind. He looked at the ranch, at the legacy built from pain and loss, and the courage to try again. "I'll make you proud, Granddad." Owen put his hand on the boy's shoulder. "You already do." They stood together on the porch as the light faded, as the mountains turned to silhouettes against the darkening sky, as another day ended and another generation prepared to carry the story forward. In the house behind them, photographs lined the mantel. Owen young and stern in his marshal's uniform. Iris on their wedding day, smiling with genuine joy. Their children at various ages. Grandchildren playing in the yard. And one photograph older than the rest, faded and precious. A woman with gentle eyes and a small girl with red hair. Abigail and Emma. Gone, but not forgotten. The ones who had taught Owen the cost of absence and the value of presence. The ranch settled into evening quiet. Cattle lowed in the distance. A dog barked once, then fell silent. Somewhere a child laughed. Life. Simple and complicated and infinitely precious. Owen Fletcher had learned that lesson the hardest way possible, had paid for it with the lives of those he loved, had spent 5 years dying slowly on a mountain, convinced that caring was too dangerous, that love was too costly. Then May had come with her dying request, and Iris had arrived unwanted by her family, but desperately needed by a man who had forgotten how to live. They had saved each other, not in some romantic fairy tale way, but in the hard daily work of choosing to care, choosing to try, choosing to believe that tomorrow could be better than yesterday. That was redemption. Not a single moment of glory, but 1,000 small choices to keep going, to keep caring, to keep living. The stars began to appear cold and distant and beautiful. The same stars that had watched over Owen and Iris on their desperate flight through winter mountains, the same stars that had seen fear and courage and love born in the most unlikely circumstances. Owen thought about the letter Abigail had written, about her final gift to him, the permission to live again, to love again, to be fully human instead of just surviving. He had honored that gift, had found someone to protect in Iris, had found someone to love, had built a life that mattered, that helped others, that left the world a little better than he had found it. That was enough. More than enough. As darkness settled over the Fletcher ranch, as the temperature dropped and the fire inside the house crackled warm and welcoming, Owen Fletcher felt something he had not felt in 5 long years on that lonely mountain. He felt peace. The unwanted daughter had become the beloved wife. The broken marshal had become whole again. The mountain man had come down from his isolation and rejoined the human race. And 47 families had gotten justice because 2 damaged people had found the courage to care about something beyond their own pain. That was the story Owen Fletcher told his grandson on a September afternoon in 1920. That was the legacy he left behind when he died 2 years later at 77 in his sleep with his children and grandchildren around him. That was the truth that James Fletcher carried forward into his own life, making his own choices, facing his own failures, finding his own redemption. Because that is what humans do. We fail, we grieve, we break. And if we are lucky, if we are brave enough, we find someone who helps us remember how to live again. We find our Iris in the wilderness. We find our last chance at redemption. And we take it.